Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Carlos and Adriana and Winslow, and we are here coming back at you with another episode from the Creative Whole podcast. And so, just real quick to get this intro started, right? You see Winslow if you are watching this live on YouTube or if you will be looking at the video version of this. But he will not be saying very much because he has a very important role playing the Godfather in a movie, and so he's really working on keeping his voice a certain uh, way. Okay, just say a little something, oh Godfather.
Hello?
Now do it again, your real one.
Hello?
Okay, he got yokes. All right, he's playing. So, Adriana from the Real Conversation podcast has decided to bless us, and I'm thankful for that because uh, I don't like doing these things alone. To be honest with you, I feel like I squirrel really bad. So I always need a little structure, and the banners on the video just aren't always enough. So Winslow's usually my structure and keeps me pushing.
And I'm out.
And he's out. So now it is me and
Hey, but they got
Adriana.
to hear his voice.
They did. The Godfather. So we're gonna go ahead and kick off today with the second episode from John Maxwell's book Leadership 101. And today we're going to be discussing the key idea. Key idea number 2: leadership is a journey that never ends. Okay. So we'll go ahead and move on. And it says leadership isn't exclusive to those at the top. It's not just for leaders. In fact, leadership is a process, and it has 4 distinct stages. All right. Well, let me back up a little bit. So, Adriano, do you agree with that first one? John Maxwell says leadership isn't exclusive to those at the top. It's not just for quote unquote leaders.
Yes, as you guys have mentioned many times in previous podcasts, that like we're all leaders in one way, shape, or form, or another word you guys have used is influencers, or you have certain level of influence to the people around you. And so being a leader is like you have someone following you, and that could be in your family, that could be maybe a new believer that is looking up to you to see what following God looks like, or maybe at your job, you got the hang of something, and people are looking at you to know how to do it. So not necessarily because you have the title, or it's just when you have people under you trying to grow with you.
Yeah, good stuff. I like it. I remember I heard someone say that leadership, the way he described it, he said it's taking initiative for the benefit of others. And I was like, that's pretty nice and simple. I like that. Doesn't require a title, and yet that's what leadership does, right? It takes initiative for the benefit of others. So,
Mm-hmm.
in the next banner, it says understanding the 4 phases of leadership is a good starting point. So there are phases here, and the first phase that we see in our blink is the first phase involves acknowledging that you don't know everything. What? Um, Acknowledging that we don't know everything. Um, that's not hard for me to acknowledge because it's really hard to be fake and act like I know everything, especially if you get pressed for information. And, I just choose the humble card real quick, and I don't have a problem saying the words I don't know, but I will find out. I think that's something that I could say I'm pretty good at. I will not act like I know if I don't know. Do you think people have a hard time admitting they don't know stuff sometimes, Adriana?
Yeah, definitely, because a lot of times you don't want to look dumb. So you want to, try to sound like you know what you're saying.
Mm-hmm.
But it's okay not knowing, because not everybody knows everything. There's things that you'll know that somebody else doesn't, and vice versa. I actually was talking with Winslow before the last time I joined you guys, that there's this saying I've heard in a lot of preachings, and it's a philosopher. I think we narrowed it down to, well, it doesn't matter, I guess. But it's very commonly said as in, like, when you don't know is when you know. And
Mm.
actually, one of my uncles that's a pastor, one of the times that he came to our church to preach, that was something that really stood out a lot. And it's like, when you think you know, you don't know. When you know that you don't know, that's when you know.
Mm. Mm. That's good. I like it. That reminds me of another quote, and basically it has to do with like education, and because it goes in the same vein of the more you know, the more you know that you don't know, right? So let's say that you
Hmm.
do know a lot. The more you know, so here's the quote, right? And it's that education, here's the quote: education is the progressive discovery of our own ignorance.
Hmm.
Education is a progressive discovery of our own ignorance. And that's always stuck with me because I was like, all right, I'm in a safe place to just not know. Right. And so it's like the
Hmm.
more, like, say you study and go in school or you learn things, it's like it's never ending, like rabbit holes of knowledge. There's like more and more. And it's like you can't know everything exhaustively.
Yeah.
So I think it is a good thing to start off from a place of humility, like John Maxwell says, and just, acknowledge that you don't know,
Yeah.
right? And so the next one says, whether you want to grow in a new role or deepen an important relationship, you can't know everything from the start. And so basically, it's just adopting a beginner's mindset. Um, have you ever wrestled with insecurity, Adriana, when maybe new job or new situation, and especially like if you are expected to know some things, and sometimes we put pressure on ourselves to, even though we know we don't know everything, but we like you said, we don't want to sound dumb.
Hmm. Yeah, I think yes, definitely. I feel like everyone at a certain level. I do tend to focus on, like, shifting my focus of what I don't know and trying to shift it into the things I can learn and catch from others to figure that out.
Hmm.
So, because a lot of times we're like, oh, we don't know, we don't know, we don't know, and then we just stay there. But if we understand we don't know and we're, full on, attention and every detail, then it's like, okay, I don't know like 5 minutes ago, but now I know this, even though I don't know that. But you're already constantly like paying attention and seeing, what's next, to be able to feel a little bit more confident of not knowing nothing,
Yeah,
at the beginning.
yeah. So we start putting our problem solving skills toward. I hear a kitty, right?
Yes, is at the door. Like, let me in.
So we start putting our problem solve. So like even when we don't know, right? I look at that like that's a form of leadership, because really leadership is solving problems, right?
Mhm.
And it's trying to see them in advance. And so I don't have to know everything in the room. And in fact, I believe good leadership doesn't seek to know everything, it seeks to know who knows what. That way you can properly connect people and align people in a way that suits them in the way they're wired, and to align people with the proper objectives, because the leader's goal is what? To get things done, right? To get the
Yeah.
result. That's the bottom line. And so even if you don't know everything, I don't need to, because I know someone that does.
Yeah, yeah, and I think that it becomes a problem when you try to be the leader that wants to do everything, because then you're the micromanager that is just kind of like nobody really can like grow in their area because it's always under what the leader knows. And even
Yes.
if they know more, they cannot like pass it because they're like being pressed down. So
Yes.
that hinders you more than helps.
Yeah, definitely. Have you ever had to work alongside somebody or work maybe underneath somebody who they micromanaged, and they did it, usually it's out of insecurity and lack of trust.
Yeah, and actually I had to learn to step back a little, um because a lot of times, like, for example, you don't want to step on anybody's toes because then it just becomes even worse, right?
Hmm.
But really, like, for my attitude is normally like what's needed, what, like if I know something, it's like I want to help, but not everybody takes it that way, as in like, oh, it's with the desire to assist, to make this situation better. A lot of times they get into their heads about like, oh, they're trying to like step over me, or they're trying to take my position, or they're trying to, so it's really hard. And I guess I learned the hard way when I was trying to be helpful in a situation where someone was like, no, you just stay there. And if, I had something to say, it was like if I'm trying to take that
Mm-hmm.
title per se. And it was like, no, it's about like all of us being better, right? But
Teamwork.
yeah, but a lot of times it doesn't really happen like that. So I've learned to, there's times that, you just go for it, and then times where you just wait and let God promote you.
Yeah, I like that. Letting God promote you. That's a beautiful lesson, because
Hmm.
I've had to learn that one when there was times when I had strivings in my heart or great ambition, right? And I just kept on hitting my head against the wall, getting frustrated because I didn't allow the Lord to promote me and create that space for me, right? And I attempted, like Proverbs 3:5 says, it says, trust in the Lord with all your heart, lean not on your own understanding. And it's when we lean on our own understanding that, sometimes we can create our own frustrations, right?
Yes,
Okay.
definitely.
All right. So the next banner says uncovering blind spots requires curiosity, soul searching, and research. I like that. Um, do you think you have to be intentional about uncovering blind spots, or is it something that you just find out on accident, or both?
I think both, but mostly intentionally, because when you're not really paying attention, you can pass through it and not even pick up anything from it. So if you're being intentional, you're kind of like how I said, when starting a new job or something, that you're just paying attention and just like trying to get, let's see, oh, this is how you do it. Oh, this is not how, do not do this. So if there's no um intention on learning, growing, and helping, then you're just gonna pass by, and then not really take anything from it. I think
Mm-hmm.
there is occasions where you do take stuff, like you learn stuff by accident, or by tripping and falling.
Mm-hmm.
But I think a lot of it, I think that there's definitely intention behind it, in order to grasp all that you can learn.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that curiosity, that's a big thing for me. I always want to know what I don't know. And it can be a fault sometimes because I could be too assessing myself in real time too much, versus giving myself the grace to try something and then assessing for those blind spots. Like I'm always on 360, my head's on a swivel, trying to,
Mm.
you know, be multi-directional all at the same time to make sure I catch those blind spots. But I'm okay more today with just not knowing, and I'll basically hit that wall or whatever, and then from there it gets my attention and say, okay, well that's something I need to take a look at. And that kind of leads us to the phase two, where of the leadership out of the four phases. Phase two is reaching a point where you know what you don't know. What does that mean, to know what you don't know? You come to a place where you know what you don't know. So at one point, the first phase is like, it's like ignorance, right? True ignorance, not like in a demeaning way, but in the truest sense of the word. Ignorance means not knowing, right? Without knowledge. I don't know
Mhm.
about that. I don't know about that system, or I've never ran that program, or I've never worked in this field before. Like I literally don't know. It doesn't mean I don't know anything, period, but I don't know nothing about that specifically. Okay. And then you go into that environment or into that field or that new job or that new project, and you quickly become aware of now what you don't know. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And but at the same time, the more you know, the more you know that there's so much more to learn.
Yes.
So, and that's being conscious of where you're at that moment in time, knowing that you're not just like, oh, I don't know what to do. No, it's
Mm-hmm.
like, I know this much, but I understand that there's so much more I still have to learn, but at least I know where I'm at now.
Yeah.
And when you're going to lead those that know less than you, but at the same time, you're being more flexible of being led by those that do know more.
Yep. Yep. Keep those coaches in your life, right? Those people
Hmm.
who've gone further than you. So the next banner says lifelong learning is crucial for successful leaders. So for that, you know how even if we do happen to have the title or the position that is looked at as a leadership role or an administrative role, um, the number one thing I personally believe is, like this says, that we are to be learners and always a student, right? And I think if we adopt that mindset and that disposition of always a learner, always a student, that helps contribute to a healthy, humble learning culture and a learning community. Because if you are in a state of or in a place of leadership, you are a contributor to culture, right? In your work environment
Hmm.
or your church or whatever the case. And if you speak of that, being a learner all the time, right? Those that are following your lead, oftentimes they will adopt your language, right?
Yeah. No, and yeah, and definitely. I was just actually talking about this on Tuesday or Monday. Um, that someone says like, oh, like I'm not a good leader. I'm just, I'm a good learner or student or something like that. And it's like, well, no, actually, being a good student makes you a good leader because you're constantly learning from other people to make you better at where you're at.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I feel like when you think that you know everything, that's when you're going to be useless
Mm-hmm.
because there's going to be amazing people that you're going to come across that you can learn so much from. But if your cup is full, you're not going to allow better things to come to you. And so you're going to stay with the same old water, per se,
Mm-hmm.
then keep on bringing a refreshment of knowledge.
Yep. Yep. Most definitely. Excuse me. So the next banner says successful leaders are lifelong learners, which you just talked about. They learn today to lead tomorrow. How important is it, Adriana, to constantly be on the cutting edge of your own uh, education learning curve to make sure you keep pushing yourself and learning if you are to be leading?
Well, just think about it this way. Like, imagine let's say the hairstylist. I know that, maybe guys don't go to it as much, but okay,
Oh, I
the
do.
ladies.
Yeah.
Okay, even haircuts, right? But you go to a hairstylist, and when they went to the school, let's say 20 years ago, they learned a certain way, right? Big bangs, big hair, whatever. Now, imagine if they didn't learn anything else, they wouldn't even have a job
True.
because they are so outdated and not willing to learn
Mm-hmm.
the new tricks that are going with the times.
Yes.
So obviously, like with the word of God, there's things that don't change, but there's just ways that do change to get the truth out.
Yes.
Even how we were talking that one time about that movie, Jesus Revolution.
Mm-hmm.
That was back in the day, hippies, and that they were hungry for the truth, and how um a lot of older generation, they're like, oh, these rebels, these like, good for nothing
Mm-hmm.
young people, they're lost. But in reality, they were searching for the same thing, for the truth, but they were just looking in the wrong places.
Yes.
Now, with nowadays, like even with our newer generation, if we don't learn what's important to them at this point, we're gonna lose their that generation because we're not able to share the truth in a way that they can receive it. So
Yes.
everybody has to keep on like changing, and that doesn't mean changing the truth because the truth is, it is what it is. But there's just a ways that you're gonna be able to outreach, ways that you're gonna lead people that is, back in the day, bosses, let's say, were like very, like by
Authoritarian.
fear, right? They would lead by fear, and that's what they would teach others and form that culture of leading by fear.
Hmm.
But as we keep on learning and developing, we keep on learning that there's better ways to lead. And it's been in the Bible all this time with Jesus, serving. That's
Servant
how,
leadership.
he set
Yep.
the way. But a lot of times, like if we're not constantly learning, we'll just stay stuck in our wrong ways.
Yeah, most definitely. And I like how you said that about the Jesus Revolution. That they were they learned up to a certain point, right? And then at some point they got comfortable. They thought this is the truth. We know it, and it worked for a while. It worked for that
Mm-hmm.
season, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then they had to adjust if they wanted to continue to live. And I think that's one thing I have read a lot about and learned a lot about is that the most successful leaders are highly adaptable, right? They're constantly changing. Like you say, you're not sacrificing the truth. But I think I heard one man say that um, what happens where we get stuck is we're answering questions that people aren't asking anymore,
Mm-hmm.
right? And at one point in
Yeah.
time, people were asking those questions. So, like for example, Um, if now, is it true that heaven and hell are real? Absolutely. That's Bible truth. Okay. Is it true that the cross and the blood and all these things are true? Absolutely. And at one point in time, you could talk about heaven and hell, or Billy Graham would be packed out, okay, his stadiums just to preach the gospel, right? Just the simple gospel. And he would talk about eternity, heaven, and hell. And the culture was made up and a mindset that was able to receive that. And it seems like
Mm-hmm.
even though that truth is still relevant, right now the focus and attention is a lot of people are not concerned about the afterlife. They're worried about how do I survive my anxiety and depression in this life, right? I'll
Mm-hmm.
worry about that when I get there. So if we stay stuck focusing about the afterlife and don't address the questions of this life for them, we cease to be relevant. We become
Yeah.
irrelevant in their minds, right?
Yeah. And they'll find somebody else that is relevant and may not be sharing the truth.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So the next thing says reading audiobooks and continuous education are daily habits for leaders. So like as a counselor, as an AOD counselor, I'm certified. We have to do CEUs, continuing education units. And like you said, like someone who's like doing hair and stuff like that, if you stick with the old trends or you're not constantly updating and staying with the times, right, you're going to miss out on a lot of opportunity and you become irrelevant. So like it's what do you do? What are your preferences to keep yourself learning? What do you like to do? Obviously, I know you like
Um,
podcasts.
yes, definitely podcast, and I do listen to a lot of audiobooks. It's I've always wanted to get into reading, but I know they say it's a muscle you have to develop, but I cannot get past the falling asleep, like you're like reading the same thing over and over because it just you know and I feel that it has to just how like for me to better concentrate, I'm like doing something, it's um I don't know if it's ADD or it's I don't know. There's just a bunch of things that are out there that who knows. But I try not to focus on that. But I know that there's just that level of like just sitting down and reading and how much I can get from it
Hmm.
compared to listening to a book and while I'm driving, while I'm cleaning,
Hmm.
and I get so much more out of it. And it's funny because and I'm actually taking some Bible classes right now, and um, the teacher said like, "Oh, I encourage you guys to read the book." He already knew that I was listening to the audiobook, and I shared it with everybody in case they wanted to. And he did say like, "Oh, I encourage you to read the book." And my husband, he's like, "Well, I'm gonna listen to it, but I'm gonna read it too because he said to read it." And I'm like, "Yeah, but that's because that's maybe his way of learning and his preference." But
Mm-hmm.
in reality, you have to be open to what works for you to get the most out of it.
Yep.
Like back in the day, like schools, it was one way, and if you're flunking is because you're dumb, not because you had a different learning style, right? And
Mm-hmm.
now that we've learned, we continue to learn that there is definitely more ways of learning, and more people have a better chance of expanding their minds in the things that they like, and not limited to a one way or nothing. And so
Mm-hmm.
I think for me, the audiobooks, I love it. I just I really get through it. Like, yes, sometimes I'm like, okay, just listen through it completely just to get the whole picture, and then go slow again. Like do it again,
Mm-hmm.
but then go slow.
Yep.
But it's really like whatever works for you, as long as you're constantly feeding yourself.
Yes.
If you love and spending time on YouTube, then make sure that it's things that is adding to you. And there's nothing wrong with like watching other shows that don't do anything for you, as long as you're still making time for the important things.
Mm-hmm.
That's either reading the Bible, praying, reading audiobooks, preaching, teachings on online or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. So it's like I think just that audiobooks, I love them. I get a lot out of them. Um, has it been your experience? It has been mine. So I'm not college educated. I've never just took a college course in my life. Okay. But I am an avid reader. I'm a reader. I'm a listener. I'm just like very addicted to learning. So that's one thing I got going for me is my hunger level. But I've learned that like some people who've been to college or whatever, like they get, as soon as they get their degree, they're done. They never pick up a book again, or they never, continuing growing. And so I think it's like you have to keep that learning
Hmm.
appetite alive, right?
Yeah.
Because you can have your degree and still become irrelevant, just like everything
Yeah.
else, right?
But you have to focus on what you like too. Because if you
Absolutely.
just got this degree because it gives you a good paying job, but you hate it, like you're not going to want to stay relevant because it was a drag to get there.
Yeah,
Compared to
absolutely.
like something that you like. For example, for me, like that's awesome that you like to read, because I think that helps a lot in your learning. And probably if you went to school, you would do amazing, because reading is a big part to pass your classes. I've gone to college for so many years, and my thing wasn't, I didn't just choose one thing and then go with it. I was just learning whatever I could, and I'm very hands-on, and like
Hmm.
learning, just I just love learning, right? But I won't, I like, even though I like learning, but I won't read books like you do.
Hmm.
For me, I would take classes. I would
Hmm.
just, I mean, I always joke around about this, but I say if there was a degree in fun, I would have had a doctorate in fun, because
Nice.
I took so many fun classes for me, I even in college, I did take like the general ones to transfer, but in between, any time that I would see something that was interesting, I was like, that I'm gonna go to that class. I did a piano class, a guitar class, a photography class,
Nice.
small performing groups, and I was there by accident. And I was like, oh, I'm here by accident. I don't play an instrument. They're like, well, do you sing? I'm like, yeah. It's like, oh, then you stay. We need a singer, so I ended up staying.
That is
I
fun.
did
That's
silk
cool.
screen. I mean, I did so many fun things that like I enjoyed learning every part of that.
Yes.
And I know I still should focus on like other stuff that you know pay, but regardless, it's just like I still feel like all of that just kind of adds in one way, shape, or form to how whatever I do, whatever position it is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because all those skills, some way, shape, or form, are transferable, right? In
Yeah.
some way. So that's awesome. I love that. Yeah, I wish I could just take electives in college and like get a degree for that.
Yeah, we would
Like
all be like
get the
doctorate
things
in
I
fun.
want, right? So all right. So the next banner says phase 3 requires patience and trust in the growth process. So phase 3 is trusting that as you grow, the effects will show. No one becomes a great leader overnight. It takes time and effort. That E word. It's easy to give up sometimes when things get challenging, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Oh yeah.
got to keep that resilient spirit in applying ourselves even when it's difficult. And and when we get to the end of these banners, we're going to get into some negative self-talk that can happen along the way as we go through these four stages. So rather than park there, we'll keep it pushing and get to the next one. So even those born with natural gifts have to work at it. What do you think about that, Adriana?
Yes, I actually was thinking about that recently because um doing like Bible school and stuff, I was just thinking, I was like, right now I know more of how to study, how to do certain things that when I was in high school I didn't know how to study. I mean, I was the first one to like finish high school or even to go to college and things like that. So there was just a lot that I didn't
Amazing.
know
That's awesome.
how to thank you. I didn't know how to even like start, you know? So I really just went with the flow. And that's I feel like how I learned just kind of to pick up from everything and anything. Um because I moved a lot growing up, and so I didn't even know English or Spanish. So then I felt lost a lot of times,
Hmm.
and I felt kind of dumb sometimes because I was like, well, like I never even heard these words, or it was funny because my first year of college, um, some people wouldn't. I guess they didn't really believe me right away that I didn't know enough English because I would hear new words all the time because I had and in 10th grade is when I started to really like learn English. Um, and they were like, wait, what? You don't know what that is? I was like, no, I've only learned English for this many years. Like, if
Hmm.
I never heard that word, then I wouldn't know. And so I look back and I'm like, man, like if I would have actually known what I know now, like I would have been like really good, amazing at school, because I did pretty good for not knowing and just going with it and
Hmm.
like kind of just going with what I remember and stuff like that because like again, I wouldn't read. I was still learning how to read in English because like I said, I didn't really know until 10th grade. So I don't know, it just really shows you how it doesn't matter how much you know of something just naturally. Um, but if you actually put in the work, it's like you see like wow, like not to say like, oh, I'm so amazing, but it's like, oh, I'm so much smarter than I thought I was.
Yes.
So definitely
Yes.
putting in the work's worth it.
I think what's cool, Johnny, is like how I know you said that you'd probably be so much further along, right? Or done so much better, some along those lines if you had
Mhm.
known more English at the time. I can't help it because this is the way my mind works. I'm like, yeah, that may be so, but there's also part of the atmosphere or the culture within you that has understanding of the struggle and that empathy, right, for those that
Mhm.
may have those common struggles. And so, like,
Mhm.
that contributes to the leadership culture that you would create because you have empathy and understanding in those areas and you can speak to those with authority, right? And
Mhm.
so, I don't know. I just always look at how God shapes
Mhm.
us. And so that's pretty
Yeah.
cool. All right.
Thank
So
you.
next one is patience with yourself is key to this phase. So we got to be patient with yourself and persevere. And perseverance to keep at it every day pays off. Not only do the benefits compound over time, but you'll also develop trust in yourself and your abilities, which bring you to phase four. So that trust in yourself that gets built over time by stick to itiveness, right? Sticking with it.
Mhm.
I think that's the key for confidence, right? And I think confidence comes from competence, right? When you feel like, okay, I got this, I know what I'm talking about, right? Like I've learned, I've gained the experience, I've gained the knowledge, I've gained the skills, and now I feel like my feet are on solid ground, and so I can speak with a confidence, right? Where we don't have confidence in our speaking sometimes because we don't always feel competent or we don't feel like we know enough, right? And I think
Yeah.
just when we do that work and stick with it, it shows up. in our confidence. So the final
Yeah.
phase is when everything coalesces and leadership starts to come naturally. Again, don't expect this to happen overnight. It takes a daily practice. And so leadership development is an ongoing process, regardless of your current stage. Does it ever bother you, Adriana, like to yourself? Because I know I've done it to myself where I'm not where I should be, right? I can always say, because I can be pretty tough on myself. I can have high expectations, or I could look to the left or to the right and look what other people are doing, and it's easy to do that. And so we can create this "I'm not where I should be" type of mentality versus, you know what, I'm really surprised how far I've come.
Yeah, I just a few days ago, I was talking to a friend that we started as medical assistants at the same time a while back, and I don't know if she said that she was going to be doing some shifts at the hospital, and I was like, "Oh, you already finished your nursing?" And she's like, "Yeah, 2 years ago." I was like, "Oh my gosh, like congratulations, that's amazing." But it's just to think like, oh, like someone that continues to just to push through, and and then even though it seems like you're never gonna do it. I remember her saying that she had to drive to LA when we were in Ventura County. She would have to drive to LA to do some classes like a few times a week, and it's like girl, that's crazy, but that's something that you really want, then like amazing, right? At that point, we had already stepped into pastoring, so for me it was just not what I wanted to do.
Hmm.
But just to see that that was something that she wanted to do, and kept on pushing, and look at now, she's been doing it for 2 years, and it's like, hey, that's amazing, and she just kept on pushing for it. And then you think like, oh, like, well, I should already have like a degree or two, just thinking of how long like it's been. I guess it's a good thing and a bad thing that I just, as soon as it comes, yeah, I acknowledge it. But it's like nice. I don't like it. Doesn't bother me as much because I I don't know. I like to think that I'm grateful to where I'm at,
Yeah.
and so like that song or saying that I'm not where I want to be, but I'm not where I used to be,
Yeah.
fits perfectly, because it's like, if you spend too much time like looking back, or looking like, oh, at someone else and like where they're at, and where I should be technically, according to whatever standards you want to compare yourself to,
Yep.
then you're just gonna like waste time. But if you could just acknowledge, celebrate those that are running to their goals, then it's like, hey, that's amazing. But then you focus on your goals and see where you're going,
Yep.
because it doesn't take it's not about um how long it's going to take you, as long as you get there, right? So
Yep.
I actually was talking about this in a previous podcast that I had, of not judging the process, and like other people's processes and your process. A lot of times you can you know judge yourself for not being in the level or place that other people are at, but not everybody started in the same place.
Yep.
So someone started here, someone started over here, but then they're going in different directions, so you still can't compare yourself to anybody, because where you started, even if you're in the same church or same school or same job, like everybody's going in different paths and different, like their journey, and so you can't really like judge others for that, because and you can't judge yourself either, because it's like different. So it's like trying to compare apples to oranges, like they said.
Yep.
It's like it's not fair. So you're just always going to feel bad about yourself, and when it's like not even the same thing, even if it's the same career, it's
Yep.
still a different process.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think it goes back to basically just trying to be better who you were yesterday, right? Just how do we
Hmm.
keep improving ourselves, right? And I think that's where our conscience, right? If there's anything for me personally, if there's something that should bother me, it's when I know I'm not applying myself, when I know I'm not putting in the work and the effort, and yet I'm wanting something, but I'm not doing it. That's what it creates. Um, get angry with myself or whatever, right? for not putting in the work. But once again, that's your motivation to put in the work and handle your business,
But
right?
you still have to like kind of see, like stop, analyze, and see where and why is it that you're not putting that effort.
Mm-hmm.
Because a
Yes.
lot of times you're being hard on yourself, but there's other reasons that are in the way of that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you trying to.
Sometimes I'm just lazy though.
But why are you lazy? Are you working a lot? Like, what is it that is happening around? Like, are you always tired because you're not being healthy? Like, so it's not just you as a person being lazy. Like,
Mm-hmm.
why are you feeling that way? Like,
Mm-hmm.
is it because of what we eat? That we're always tired and sleepy and not enough energy, or is it because we're working way too much, and so our time is just stretched a lot, and there's just a lot of there's always a reason, I
Mm-hmm.
would say. And so instead of being hard on ourselves, it's like you have to think outside the box and see what is standing in the way and try that. Because if you're just like, oh, I need to do it, but you obviously keep on running to the same issue, it's like, well, maybe that way doesn't work. What works? What
Mm-hmm.
other way works? So I don't know, I think that's part of like just kind of analyzing your situation a little bit before you're
Come
being
to
so
that
hard on yourself.
conclusion. Yeah, I think
Mm-hmm.
I think that's really really good advice, and you're kind of preaching over here. I'm feeling that because I experienced that. I think it's so. Would you say that there is a category though for someone just making excuses? I understand you could get down to a motivation why, but I know some people
um
who are just addicted to like complaining, like they just it's like a thing for them. You know what I mean?
yes, but at the same time, I think there's some issues there that are still holding them down.
Yeah,
Some
absolutely.
change, some trauma, some things that are getting in the way.
Yeah,
So I feel that
absolutely.
even if you're just constantly in that negative space, really trying to come down to the bottom of what the real issue is, to the root of the problem.
Mm-hmm.
And once you deal with that, that can open up, your attitude. Even change it to an attitude of gratitude that
Yes.
is going to open your way of thinking for things, that even if things don't work out, you're not going to be like, oh, it was me. And no, it's like, oh well, let me try again, maybe try a different way, and that's like something that changes in here. So
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it doesn't matter, I mean, unless you're like a psycho completely, like, there's no ounce of
Rhyme or
human
reason.
in you
Yeah.
left, then yes. But if not, I feel like there's a way, like even if it's like, this person always is gossiping about people, or this person is like just like they're mean, or it's like, what is hurting them? Like,
Mm-hmm.
wasn't there like a story of a lion that he was all mad and it was because he had something on his paw or something? I think it's like a children's book. If not, I just made one up. But but
Write it.
it's like I feel I'm pretty sure there is something like that. But there's always something. There's always
Mm-hmm.
something. Like when you look at children, children are very, it is what it is, and you know,
Mm-hmm.
and even children come so like hurt and broken and acting out. But a lot of time is that lack of love, or attention, or whatever it is that is causing those bad behaviors.
Mm-hmm.
And so no matter if you feel like, nah, that person's just like rotten, like, no, it's probably something else. But the more we love people, you never know, you might melt their little hearts.
Yeah. Amen. That's a good word. That'll preach. That'll preach. That's good stuff. Love it. Thank you for sharing that. That was really good. I appreciate that. Um, so we're gonna move on to the next one. So it says, ask any effective leader in your life, and you'll more than likely find out they rely on a self-development plan to maintain and grow their skills. Yeah, I would pretty much agree with that.
Hmm.
So now we're going to do a quick recap, and we're going to break down each of these levels again in a different way. And so I'll run through these because I want to get to the negative self talk because I think that'll be beneficial for those listening. Acknowledging the recap is acknowledging what you don't know. You begin by understanding that there are things you don't know about leadership. You realize that there are areas where you can improve and learn. Knowing what you don't know. You can actively seek knowledge and information about leadership. You become aware of the skills and abilities you need to develop. You learn from books and courses, etc. And trusting your growth and seeing the effects. You have patience with yourself and trust the process of growth. You understand that becoming a great leader takes time and effort. To start seeing positive changes and improvements in your leadership abilities. All right. I know I'm reading fast, but I really don't want to keep everyone too long. And I want to get to those questions or those negative self talk. So the next one is leadership comes naturally through continuous practice and experience. Leadership becomes easier, your skills become ingrained and automatic, requiring less conscious effort. The next one is leadership becomes a natural part of who you are, and you can lead with confidence and ease. So, in summary, you begin by acknowledging that you don't know, then actively seek knowledge and skills. With patience and practice, you start seeing the effects of your growth, leading to a point where leadership becomes natural and effortless for you. So, I kind of look at it like driving a stick. You know, at some point in time, you didn't know how to drive a stick, and you quickly became aware of what you didn't know when you realized it looked like you were had hydraulics in your car and you're going back and forth, up and down, right? Um, and so there's stages to the learning process. So here's a couple examples of some negative self-talk, okay, that one might encounter in each stage of the leadership development. So here's an example when it comes to acknowledging what you don't know. Some negative self talk may sound like this: I'll never be able to learn all the skills necessary to be a good leader. Or I'm not cut out for leadership. I don't have what it takes. Okay. Another statements that we could be thinking to ourselves. We may never even say it out loud, but they're beliefs that harass us, right? And disempower us. Something like this: I'm afraid to ask questions because it will reveal my lack of knowledge. Okay. That's fear based.
That's a common one. That's a common one in leaders. I mean, I've seen it for
Mm-hmm.
sure.
Yeah, because I mean, a lot of times I'll say a lot of times I don't want to expose my hand because I don't want to look stupid. And a lot of that, Adriana, goes back to my childhood because I thought I was stupid when I was young. And so those are still more sensitive issues where, where it does take more courage for me to step out and let it be known that I'm going to be vulnerable here and share what I don't know. All right.
Yeah.
So the next one is when you knowing what you don't know. This is when you become aware. You have a heightened awareness now of what you need to learn. But here's some negative self-talk that you could experience. Things like this: I'm so far behind others who have more experience and knowledge. That's a feeling, right? I'll never be able to catch up to those who are already skilled leaders. And the next one is negative self talk. I'm always making mistakes and it's embarrassing. Mm. That embarrassing thing is that's a real one for me. I can't stand feeling embarrassed. That's something that I have to take to the Lord because I am not perfect at all. And there's things that are more triggering to me, and embarrassment and feeling stupid are ones for me. So I've had to really allow the Lord to build my courage and my humility to say, you know what, I come to you and I feel these feelings, but it does not mean that I'm stupid. It does not mean that I'm unworthy. It does not mean that, you know what I mean, I can't learn. So, like you said, it's going back to reminding yourself that you can do these things. You just have to maybe take a look at it from a different perspective, right?
Yeah, and learn to laugh about it when you don't know, when you
Mm,
make mistakes. Just learning like if you make this mistake, did you die? No, then
yeah,
move on. Like, and what matters is like what you think of yourself, but until you learn to see yourself the way God sees you,
man.
then you're okay with like you're not perfect and it's okay.
Yeah, and it's okay. And I like it that you say learn to laugh. Learn to laugh. That's actually a skill. It is a skill. It doesn't come naturally for everybody, and it's something that doesn't come naturally to me. So I appreciate people who can laugh at themselves, and not take themselves too serious. Next one is trusting your growth and seeing the effects. Here's some negative self-talk. I'm not improving fast enough. Okay. I'll never become a competent leader. Here's another one. Others are progressing much faster than me. I must be doing something wrong. Once again, it's comparing, like you said. Okay. More negative self talk. My efforts aren't making a difference. I'll never achieve the level of leadership I desire. And feel free to jump in at any point if any of these, don't worry about cutting me off. Okay. Because otherwise I'll just keep going and going and going. Okay. So me and Adrian are learning our flow. This is our first time going together, just me and her. So the next one is leadership comes naturally. Okay, so as you grow, it will become more natural. But here's some negative self-talk that some people may experience. I'm just lucky. I don't really deserve the success I've achieved. Or I'm constantly worried that my leadership skills will deteriorate and I will lose my abilities. Or another way of saying it, I may become irrelevant, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And this one is a big one. I'm an imposter. People will eventually discover that I'm not as capable as they think. Now, that one is, I had to learn. Have you ever heard of the imposter syndrome?
No, I haven't, but it makes sense.
Yeah. And that's a one that I dealt with. So because I haven't been to college, it's always been that little bit of an insecurity, right? Especially when I've been around college educated people who got masters and they got all this education, you know. But by the grace of God, He's put me at the tables with these same people. And so not only did I have the lack of education, but my background coming from severe addiction and the lifestyle that I was living, there's just a whole lot of contrast in my mind of who I am versus there. And so a lot of times I felt like a complete imposter. Like, why am I sitting at this table? I don't belong here. I shouldn't be here. And everything inside of me wanted to run out of the room because I felt so unworthy and like I didn't belong. And you know what? I had to go back to God, and I've had to have friends rebuke me, sister. Let me know, say, did God put you there or did you put yourself there? I'm like, well, God put me there. Well, then why are you going against what God's doing? Right?
And that I think that goes to one, false humility. You always want to stay, humble, but then it's just doubting. Um, I feel like how they told you who put you there.
Mm-hmm.
If you look back in the Bible, the disciples that the people that Jesus was close to, it was people that were not worthy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's important to recognize that yes, you are not worthy of what we have, but it's because there was favor that we found in God to put us where we're at, because He said, I can trust you with this. It's not for your good works. It's not for your education level. I mean, like, I've been to school so long, and like, I have an AA. Like, that's it. I did like a medical assistant thing that was separate, but it's like because I kept on like jumping around to learn everything I wanted to learn. And
Mm-hmm.
so I could be like, well, I'm not, I worked before with another person that she had like so many degrees, and she's amazing. She's very outspoken and everything, and I think that's why a lot of times they wouldn't promote her. But honestly, what she has is gold, and until they see it, like, they're missing out.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like okay, we make the same amount, and because we do the same work, and not because of the degrees, if we're able to do the job.
Yes.
And a lot of times we could be like, well, trying to find that balance, but at the same time, we have to remember we don't have to be all down about it, because then we're just wasting our time and we're
Mm-hmm.
allowing depression to come in and doubt that's going to limit what God wants to do through you.
Yep.
So just remembering, yes, we're still a vessel, we're nothing more, but at the same time, we are a vessel that was chosen by God to be exactly where we're at. And there's
Yes.
nothing wrong with that, because
Yep.
that's exactly what God wants to do. So
Yep.
like unless you're saying, well, God's wrong, then it's you're right where you need to be, and it's not because of you, and it's all those experiences that you had, you're adding something that other people cannot add. I was never someone that was in like a lifestyle that gave me that testimony.
Mm-hmm.
But in my scenario, would be my testimony was that God kept me from that. So
Sure.
it goes back to being in your own journey, your own process, and embracing that. And
Mm-hmm.
no matter where you're at or who you're with, like if God can trust you with that much, always giving glory and honor to God without like um, spitting on the calling that He's giving you, because it's not by your good works, then He'll move you to more. And it's again not going to be for you, but it's going to be for those that are going to be able to receive God
That
because
trust.
you were willing to be used.
Yep. Yep. Good words. Because that he entrusts us, right? And I love that scripture where he
Mm-hmm.
says that God chose the foolish things of the world to confound the
Mm-hmm.
wise. And I'm like, yes.
Yeah.
He surely did. All right. So going back to negative self-talk, it can be detrimental to one's growth and confidence as a leader. It's important to recognize and challenge these negative thoughts, replacing them with positive and encouraging ones. And more specifically, the Word of God, right? Renew your mind with the truth. And like my sisters said so nicely, it's who God says you are, not who the devil says you are, not who your past says you are, not who people who've seen you through a human lens says you are. It's who God says you are. And grab a
Yeah.
hold of those truths like a pit bull on a pork chop and hold on to them and let God do what he wants to do because he is God and they are not. Amen. So
Yeah.
we're coming up to a close and we'll close with this last one. Developing a growth mindset and seeking support from mentors or peers can help counteract these negative beliefs and foster a more empowering mindset. So, with that said, Adriana, any final thoughts, closing words, things you'd like to share?
Yeah, I would definitely say, if you want to be a good leader, just get close to those that you see leading the right way, because there's a lot that we're going to be learning. And even when you are in a position of leading so many, like remember that you're still a vessel the same way when you started, and it's just all the glory and honor to God.
Yes, yes. Amen. All right. Well, this concludes another episode of the Creative Whole Podcast. I'm Carlos Garcia. Okay. And Winslow is back there somewhere playing some cool music. And hopefully the Godfather gets better. And Adriana Velez, we want to thank you once again for joining us. Thank you for being on the show. You've been a great help. I appreciate the thoughts you brought, good wisdom from the Lord, and definitely encouraging. And if you get a chance, check out Adriana's podcast, The Real Conversation, or in Spanish. How do you say it, my sister?
Conversación real.
Like that. All right. So God bless you guys. We hope you have a wonderful week. We will see you next time. We are out. Thank you for joining us, the Creative Whole Podcast. Peace.